Hi everybody, in today's video I'm going to look at building and painting a couple of Renedra terrain products. There's a hard plastic ramshackle church and ramshackle barn. So the barn comes in, 6 sections, along with the lean-to in another 4 sections. The church box doesn't tell me how many pieces there are, so we'll open this one first and see what the frames look like. Renedra are the company that cast all the plastic for companies like Perry and Warlord. That's good, there is a set of instructions inside the box for the church. Fairly straightforward. And let's see, there's one frame with the tower and the bells. We've got the front and back, the doors here. Sidewall and roof and other sidewall and roof. Inside the barn box, just 3 frames, no instructions, but we do have that guide on the box. 2 identical frames, roof and 1 wall, some ladders and pitchforks as decoration. And this will be the roof for the lean-to, the wall for the lean-to. The side walls are on the other frame, and front and back with a cartwheel as well for decoration. Right, I'll clip all these off the sprue and we'll see how easy it is to build. So this is the last piece of barn wall I'm taking off the sprue. I've got some side cutters here to help snip it clear. Now there are some areas of flash certainly within the window frame, and round about the sides there's some raggedy bits as well. Where I've snipped with the cutters, that's not very flush, and that might affect how things glue together. So to deal with all these bits, I've got a scalpel blade, and I'm just going to use that to smooth all this down inside the gaps as well. Once I've trimmed up all these bits, we'll start some construction. Time to stick things together. I've got some Revel polystyrene cement. Unfortunately, the cast comes with this nice chunk of plastic sculpted in, which will act as a nice guide as to where to place the wall. I'm just going to rest that on the table and hold this for a minute or so. If you had more professional setup, you might want to have some sort of vice system set up to hold pieces together, but no such specialities here. So I've got the walls and the lean-to gluing together. The roof of the main building, there are some built-in points to let it sit in place without sliding off. I think I might leave the roof unglued, and then there is the potential of models going in for different scenarios. So I'll just run some polystyrene cement along this line there and glue the 2 halves of the roof together. Moving on to building the church. Much like the barn, I'll be gluing the walls together. There's a bit of decoration above the door. And the more interesting part of the build, I think, is going to be the bell tower. So I'll build the basic structure and then maybe come back for a closer look at how to do the bell tower. Now here's something I really like on this kit. On the picture here, it tells us to have the angled edges up. It has numbered them here and where they go on the base. Actually says bell housing floor, and it has a 1, 2 and a 3, which matches up with the picture. Really clear instructions. Even better, I think, than having the 1 and the 2 on the sprue, because it's quite easy to cut things off and then struggle to work out what was what if you're not paying attention. Now for part 7 of the build, it doesn't have the numbers on the pieces, but one thing to be aware of is that these two bits should be opposite each other, because this is where the support for hanging the bell sits, and that will rest between the two of them there. Again, nice notches in the plastic to line everything up. So to help keep this part square, I have flipped around the built bell housing base and slotted that in. I haven't glued it yet, but this is going to help this piece dry at right angles so that later on the fit is good with the base component. Step 8 is going to be quite straightforward. Some glue either side of the spire pieces and either side of the halves of the bell, and then I'll glue down onto the second base here. So the two halves of the bell have been glued together. In the instructions it says just to push the bell on, don't glue this bit, and this will drop in to the bell tower there. I am not going to glue this because I think this is going to be helpful for painting it later and maybe drop it in after. So I won't glue the spire on either. And if I bring the church back in, again, I'm leaving the roof separate, so if models do get inside in a game, we can play that out. But also by leaving the roof off and things in constituent parts, it's going to make it much easier to paint the insides. I think with all the windows and gaps, having this as grey plastic inside wouldn't look great, so I will give that a prime in a dark colour. The bell tower, once I've glued the top on, will sit something like this at an angle. So I imagine this piece will need to get glued on. But it should still be possible, I think, to lift that roof off when in play. And smack the camera for good measure. Right, let everything dry and then prime it up. Done my priming. I've used spray primers from the Colour Forge. So a brown, it's Hyrax brown for the barn, and a very dark grey called Raven Black for the church. There's a bit of variety by going for 2 different colours. On to painting then. I've got big dry brush with some Army Painter Monster Brown, and I'm just going to pick up all the nice raised detail that's in the sculpting here. Nothing too technical with this at all. After the Monster Brown, I will probably get a lighter colour out as well, just to build up on the appearance of the sharpest edges. So Arm Painter Banshee Brown, just to help add a bit of colour variation. things like the rope on the door. Process for the church is going to be similar, except I'm using Vallejo Game Colour Cold Grey. My secondary highlights are with Vallejo Deck Tan. Not going to do many details, but what I do have here is some Army Painter Dark Rust. This is from their new Fanatic range. It's my first time using it. So it's a good hint in life is if you're trying to paint for the first time, bit of terrain's not a bad place to test it. Our impression here is that it's got some ground up particles in it to give it a sort of texture effect. The bell for the church is getting a coat of Vallejo bronze. One thing to be mindful of if you're building this in sections and then gluing it together later is that polystyrene cement doesn't really work that well with paint on the opposing surfaces. So I will be taking my blade along the top and scraping back the layer of paint to the plastic. In my dry fit as well, I noticed that there's not a perfect fit here. Not such a big deal because it's a ruined church, but I will probably cut this last board back to let that slot on a bit better. So I've trimmed that bit back. I should probably put in the disclaimer that the reason it's not fitting might not be down to the kit itself, but my improper positioning of the pieces as I've been building is a more likely explanation. But anyway, the cut that I've done has worked, so I'll just hold this in place till it dries. And here's a still of the finished kit sitting on my gaming table. There's some 28mm bolt action British figures beside them, so you get an idea of scale. Overall, really enjoyed building these kits. I think they went together well and they're logically designed with good instructions. Take paint well as well. I hope that this has been a useful video for people who are looking for terrain, and if you've got any comments about it, please leave them below. See you next time. Bye bye.